My name is Brittain, and I'm studying a Bachelor of Communications and Media Studies. When I was younger, I was particularly interested in drawings, arts, and crafts. I actually couldn't pay attention in school, so I draw things in my notebook all day, every day in class. It all started when I lived in Japan, when my father was stationed there in the US military. I was about 3 till about 9. And the deep storylines with extra detail and the epic humble heroes and the silly slapstick supporting roles. It was always an interest of mine to take part in contributing to Japanese animation. So I wondered if I were to get back into sketching and drawing like I did as a youngster, would it be possible to get into the manga and anime franchise living in Australia? I know Australian manga sounds kind of contradicting, knowing that manga means it is a Japanese comic. So I did research and I stumbled across an Australian graphic novelist by the name of Queenie Chan. She worked on a series of manga with best-selling author Dean Koontz behind the franchise Odd Thomas. On her website, she has a biography that discusses how she started and how her ideas actually caught the idea of Tokyo Pop, where she published a series called The Dreaming, which became published in 8 different languages. So I tried emailing Queenie and not receiving a reply. So understanding that Queenie is a bit of a busy lady, I ventured out to the central part of Sydney CBD to talk to the professionals. There were many different bookstores that sold comics. They had their own take on Australian comic book writing, but they had nothing particularly on Australian manga. It was completely unheard of. I stumbled across a place called Comic Kingdom, and there were older people, kind of depressed, people complaining about the comic market dying and the store closing because no one is buying comics anymore. So that in itself wasn't a good indication about manga writing, right? So I asked them if they know of any Australian manga, and they looked at me with absolute confusion and simply said, "Never heard of it." So then I decided I'll go to another place called King Comics. I was able to talk to a guy by the name of Vern, who was actually very helpful. I mentioned that years ago he tried to create manga comics with a group of other enthusiasts, but the publishing became too hard to finance and find people who were actually interested to support them. Through a couple years, they all lost time because of family and work commitments, and he mentioned that it was just too hard and the market is competitive. After that depressing discussion, I continued trying to look for an interview, and the last place I had to check was Kinokuniya on George Street. Before walking in the store, you can actually see the sheer size of it and how magnificent it is. I thought surely someone could actually help me here. As I walked into the bookstore, I was able to get into contact with Chui Chan, and was actually very interested and very well aware of Australian manga. So I want to ask you, have you heard of Australian manga?
Well, we have Australian manga here. We don't have a lot, but we do have 2 very successful mangaka, both women by coincidence.
Awesome.
One's Queenie Chan, and she wrote The Dreaming a few years ago. Yeah, she's awesome. We have her here in the store quite often. And the other person is Madeline Rosca, and she did a book called Hollow Fields, which is this book. And this is another fantastically beautiful book. Very, very schooled in the manga style, and you wouldn't necessarily tell the difference, which is how good she is. She actually won came second in the inaugural Prime Minister's International Manga Award. So she lives in Tasmania.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
That is amazing. So a Tasmanian girl writing manga. That's
Yes.
a completely new person
Absolutely.
that I haven't heard of.
That's right. She just made it through that competition all the way to Japan. You know, she got flown out there, came back here, did the job, did the work. Had these two people have obviously worked very hard and got to the very top. You know, but they are unfortunately outliers to the general story of people who want to draw Australian manga. But at the same time, they are absolutely role models and pathfinders. If you follow their path, you're likely to find a success if you put the work in.
Totally.
So they didn't do anything like ultra different. They didn't have any kind of sort of like a supernatural ingredient or anything like that. Just worked hard, gave the book and the work to people who could see it, who could publish it, and they did. So I would say that would be the path for anybody wanting to be.
Well, there you have it. It can be done, thanks to Madeline Rosca and Queenie Chan. It will be a hard road, but I will have to stick with it and keep working on material, focus on story, and my artwork. And I'll also look into getting into competitions as well, much like Madeline Rosca did. Not sure what manga in Australia will look like in the future. Either way, I hope I could be part of it.